Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of RHLSTP, recorded remotely from my beautiful attic. This week we're with Kiri Pritchard-McLean, fantastic act, fantastic person. She's been on before as part of All Killer No Filler podcast, but this is just her on her own. She was great. Look, if you enjoy this stuff, there's lots of ways you can get on board. If you want to watch us on Twitch, if you're with Amazon Prime, you can link your accounts and give us £5 a month for free without no cost to yourself. It's crazy. You can become a monthly badger. Go fasterstripe.com/badges. Get lots of backstage interviews, all sorts of lovely surprises as well in there, plus stand-up shows, plus emails giving you offers and an advance warning of guests, plus entry into a monthly competition where you can win books and DVDs and old scripts and other bits of tat that are probably worth a little bit of money on eBay, some of them. You can go to Go Faster Stripe and just buy, say, the Emergency Questions books. There's 3 for £20, all the 3 different ones. There's the other one. It's over there. I was using it in last night. They're £10 each, or 3 for 20. Nearly all different questions. There's 1,800 different questions plus if you buy all 3. You can buy copies now, very briefly, of my autobiography, How Not to Grow Up, of the year I turned 40. And they've all been lovingly drawn with a spunking cock that's different in every episode, in every book. And they're also signed by me. When they're gone, my fan friends. There aren't too many of them. There's also downloads and trump cards. These fantastic playable RHLSTP trump cards. All sorts of stuff you can do to help us out. Or you can just listen to the podcasts with the adverts and that will provide us with revenue. Or you can just tell your friends about the podcast. If you can't afford to pay, please don't. Let the people who can pay. Let those who cannot pay, let those who can pay. Let those who cannot pay, not pay. And those who can pay. And those who can pay but don't want to pay, they don't have to pay either. And those who cannot pay but want to pay, they shouldn't pay. Don't pay. Just listening, just spreading the word. If you have any friends who you think would enjoy this podcast, let them know about it. It's a competitive marketplace out there. I hope you're having an okay time in these weird and wonderful times. Let's sit back. I hope this is all helping a little bit. It's helped me through the last 3 months of madness. And I'm on Twitch most evenings. Twitch.tv/RKHerring. You can watch the RHLSTP as being recorded live on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. And I'm playing snooker and I'm thinking of some other things to get going with as well. So keep an eye on my channel, my friends. Now let's sit back, relax, and enjoy RHLSTP with Kiri Pritchard-McLean. McLean. I mean, it's spelt McLean, but it's pronounced McLain. That's what I think. That's my take on it. Hello, welcome, please welcome a man who is wearing his swimming trunks still from yesterday. It's not pleasant. It's Richard Herring. Hello, welcome to Richard Herring's Lockdowns Shagging Tedious podcast. Very funny, very difficult to cope at this stage. I've had quite a bad week. But I was hanging around with Professor Neil Ferguson the other day. You know, he's the guy. He just came round to my house uninvited. He's the guy who advised about lockdown, saying we should all stay in our houses, and then went out, or his married lover came round. His married friend came over, or he went over to hers to stay. But they're on the front pages of all the newspapers. And, mate, she was worth losing a job for. That's all I'm saying. High five, Neil Ferguson. You're very cool. Yeah, he calls it RHLSTP anyway. And now he's unemployed. He can do what he likes. But yes, it's been a weird. We're like 100,000 days into this. I've been a bit depressed this week, but also very tired, and also having extremely weird dreams. I had a dream the other day where I had my son. He's my second favourite child. I will say that, but I still like him. For some reason, I had his hand in one of those old massive paper slicing machines you had at school, and I was just trying to cut. I was just about to cut the tip of his fingers off, and I was telling him to position his fingers a bit more carefully. Luckily, I woke up because I'm very squeamish, and I like him having fingers. And also, the idea of cutting off all his fingers, there's a lot of work and admin to cope with that, which would have been much worse than anything else, having to get him to hospital, collect up all the bits of finger, sew them back on again. So I'm glad I woke up from that, but that's pretty horrific. And then I also, the other night, I had a dream, a really long dream, in which I had 2 threesomes. It was incredible. The dream went on and on. Had a threesome with my wife and someone else, and then that ended. And then we got into a threesome with someone else as well. Luckily, unidentifiable generic characters, not anyone we know in real life. I told my wife that I'd had 2 dreams about threesomes. She didn't seem that impressed with me. But, she was in both the threesomes. And, in the dreamscape, I don't have to be faithful to her. She should take that as a massive compliment that she was in both of them. Instead, she was annoyed with me. I had to sleep on the sofa. So it's been a weird dreams. I hope you're all coping okay. God knows how long this is going to go on for. The people I'm really feeling sorry for are students who are going to be starting university in September, October, because, you've worked hard. I mean, A, you've got your A-levels to sort out now somehow, and then B, you're going to university, and you're going to have to self-isolate and do all your lectures on camera, no freshers week, no meeting up with people, and, that's what it's about. You've done all the hard work, you get to university, you get to have some fun. If the first year at my university had been in lockdown, I would have missed out on almost one half of a sex in the first year and a half I was at university. That's what I had. I had sex half a time. And that's not because it finished quickly. It's because I had second thoughts during the loss of my virginity about 2 months before I turned 20, and politely withdrew before anyone had reached any form of ending. It's turning into a very sexy podcast already. You can tell. The good news for me this week is I found a pack of self-raising flour. It's the first one I've found in 6 weeks. It was in the post office in my village. It was incredible. The guy's obviously bought a massive bag of self-raising flour, and he's made it into little bags and been selling them off at a very reasonable price. I felt like a sort of drug lord bringing that home, and also knew how happy everyone would be. That's like about 4 rounds of pancakes I had. There's a kilo of self-raising flour. Very, very exciting for me. That's what my life's become. I hope your life is going better than mine. I will remind you, if you're watching on Twitch, and even if you're not, if you're listening to this in the future, I hope things are a bit brighter for you there. But it seems unlikely. Let's face it. It's probably much worse. I hope nothing has mutated into something much worse. Oh, I've made it happen now by saying it. Please feel free to subscribe to my Twitch channel. You can do it with money, but you can also do it if you're an Amazon Prime member for free. Go to Herring1967 on YouTube, and there's a lovely video explaining how you can do that. Also, if you want to help us out through this difficult period, Go Faster Stripe is somewhere you should be going. GoFasterStripe.com. You can buy lots of downloads of lots of comedians and help out lots of comedians. And Chris Evans, not that one. But you can also buy all 3 of our amazing emergency questions books. They're all displayed upside down for humorous purpose. For just £20, you can buy Top Trumps with some of my favourite guests, a workable card game of Top Trumps. GoFasterStripe.com, and you can become a monthly badger. GoFasterStripe.com/badges. £3 a month. You can pay more if you like. You get a different coloured badge if you pay more, and you get lots of backstage interviews with all the theatre guests we've had. The one with Sir Michael Palin, which is coming up next week as I speak, is absolutely superb. I think it might be better than his actual interview, which is also superb. He improvised an entire scene to Life of Brian in the backstage interview, and I think that is worth £3 a month for at least a year just to get a chance to see that. So someone's saying I'm talking quickly on the chat room. I'm just drinking gin and tonic tonight, and there's nothing else. I've not been sniffing flour, as you seem to be implying. And we're apparently up to 500 viewers. That's what the chat room's saying. That's very good. So that's almost enough to get going. Next week here on both on Twitch and on the podcast will be Richard Osman making his maybe 4th appearance. Very excited about talking to him. I've done another Pointless Celebrities since we last spoke. I don't think it's not gone out yet, so we can't talk really about that with him. But I think he's what the country needs in lockdown. So I hope you will enjoy that. Do tune in at 8 o'clock on Wednesdays or any time with the podcast after it comes out. That's how it works. So let's welcome my guest this week, making her second appearance as well. She's probably best known for her appearance in the short film Hungover or Pregnant, which I watched today and which is absolutely excellent and lots of fun, even though she said she would never act on the last time she was on. Will you welcome Kiri Pritchard-McLean, ladies and gentlemen? Here she is. Oh, I put her on instead of both of us. Let's put both of us on. There we go. That was nice. It was like I did it on purpose. Yeah, how are you doing? We're here.
I'm good. How are you, love?
Yeah. I'm not. Well, I'm going insane. I'm literally going insane. I'm wearing swimming trunks. I'm drinking gin from an enormous glass that was full of gin and tonic before we started. It's now half empty. And my wife's not talking to me because I'm not even unfaithful. Is it unfaithful to have a threesome with someone if your wife is one of the people in the threesome and has agreed to it?
I think that's
in
incredible.
A dream.
I think that's the fact that she makes the cut of all the people that could have been there. I think it's a really, really good sign. And I think it's really nice that I was clearly, obviously, the other person, and that's why you've asked me to do the podcast. That's why she's not talking to you.
It could be. It could be. Is it getting hot in here? Good job. I'm wearing swimming trunks. Oh no.
Are you really wearing swimming trunks?
I'm wearing swimming trunks. Do you want to see?
Well, you didn't wait for my answer before you got up. Wow. So
I've gone mad.
Are your genitals hanging in one of those sort of sacks that you put oranges in right now?
They're in a little ball bag. Yeah, well, they're sort of nearly in there. They are they're large. I have large testicles due to my age and virility, and so they don't quite fit in.
Right. Well, large is. You mean long? Do you mean they're pendulous?
No, they get longer as you get older. They've always been, they've always been an encumbrance to me.
Wow. And look at you, brave soldier. You've just pushed on. You'd never know.
Hardly anyone knows, what it's like to. People don't think of it. You've got to just readjust them a bit. It's not that bad. This is why we haven't had any women so far on the remote podcast, because it's straight away. It's got just dirty.
I started it there for once.
That is good. So, I did enjoy your. You did say last time you wouldn't do acting in the Geens sketch group because you felt acting was false and you didn't like stand-up comedians getting into acting. But then you are acting in little bits and pieces. Do you not think it's acting?
I've done 2 things where I've played myself, and basically the only time I've ever agreed to it, one was for a Sky Halloween short, and one was for that sketch. And it's when they say you can't write this unless you're in it. Right. And that's and I always just, I'm like, okay, well, I'll be myself. Because I'm in the Sky thing, I tried to write myself as a corpse. So the whole thing was happening over me because I was like, well, I can do that. But part of it is they wanted you to be on screen. And I just have that thing where, I think I said it to you before, that there are better actors than me. So if I wrote something, I can't do it the best it would be, even if it was just to be me. There's someone who could do a better job of being me. Like, good actors are brilliant. So basically, if you see me acting in something, it means that I have been forced into doing it.
Well, you were good. You were very good, and it's a very funny short. It was for the BBC, was it? Was a BBC one of those BBC?
I had to really fight for it because basically the premise is how I constantly think I'm late for my period, especially when I'm hungover. And I go through the whole thing of I know what all the local schools to me are on Ofsted, because I just go down this rabbit hole whenever I think I'm pregnant, and it's just because I can't count very well. And so the end, is it a denouement? Something like that. The end.
Denouement, very good, yeah.
Is that right? My partner uses that word, and so I've just gone, I think that's what it means, and then just got. It only looks impressive if we don't go, is that what that means? Afterwards. So at the end, basically, the payoff is. I've just put my partner through all this stuff, and then you see my knickers with some blood in, and it's just that I have come on. I've just been hungover, and they had to really fucking fight to have that. They were like, "Oh, it looks like a miscarriage." I'm like, "Not to anyone who's had a period, it doesn't, or a miscarriage." And they were like, "It's a bit real. Can't she just take a hot water bottle and some chocolate?" I was like, "No," and they wanted to be this weird euphemistic thing, and it turned out it was one of the first things to show period blood,
right?
It's always we're apparently leak blue liquid or whatever. But I had to read. These notes were coming down through a female commissioner, and I was like, "Come on, mate! I really thought you'd be sort of fine with this, but having to fight for for a bloody gusset, mate. Was was the hill that I was willing to die on, as it turns out.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad it was. It was a bold move. Well, it is a surprise. Not now for anyone who hasn't seen it, but there we go. But no, but that's what I mean. I was saying to you before we started. I saw you supporting London Hughes. Was the last time I saw you do stand up on your own, and you're bold as a performer. I really like. You've really got a great style straight away, which I think a lot, and you really know who you are straight off the bat from the way you look and the way you hold yourself. Which I think a lot of comics take a long time to get that, but you've definitely got a definite look and a definite sort of persona that I think really sort of cements you the minute you're on stage. Was that a deliberate thing to do that, or was that just how you wanted to? Is that just how you dress anyway?
Well, the definitely what I look like came first, because I remember that, when people always go, "What kind of comedy do you do?" And you just want to be like, unless you can say one-liners or just stories, it's very hard to tell people, because it's just like, I don't know, I just talk about stuff that happens to me. It's not a very satisfying answer. And I just thought, since I started doing comedy, I'm like, I've got nothing that stands out about me, and I'm not, I'm the one who talks about this or does this stuff. And I didn't feel quite Welsh enough to say, I'm not like Rod Gilbert way, like, oh, well, I'm the Welsh comedian. So I was like, well, no one's going to remember me from my material, which is just about like my boyfriend and dogs or whatever. And so I was like, well, just make sure you know what you look like, because then they might like remember. And also it was a weird mix of things, because I was like 23 when I started doing stand-up. And before that, I'd go out like 3 nights a week with my girls, and I'd get all dressed up. And then I was spending all that money on going to gigs. So instead of spending 60 quid on a night out and a taxi home and a takeaway, I was spending that to get to Newcastle in petrol to do 5 minutes on stage. And so I had all these clothes from like going out and nights out that I wasn't wearing. And I was like, I just want to dress like it's an occasion, because I don't fucking go out anymore. And also it was my way of showing like an audience that I've made an effort to be here. Like I'm pleased to be here, and I'm pleased that you've got a babysitter and you spent some money. So it's kind of like my way of showing some respect that I've made an effort. And I love anything that's like over the top, and I love that it looked a bit shit as well. Like I always wear sequins. That's like my rule, is I always wear sequins when I'm performing. And I just love the idea of like drag queens and working men's clubs, and it just being sort of a bit grotty but a bit glamorous. And I just think it's a real good mix of like highbrow, lowbrow kind of thing. And that's sort of what I've tried to like emulate. So I was like, well, just wear sequins, because then it's easy to decide what to wear, because you can overthink what you wear for a gig. So I was like, well, that's my uniform. And then I've had this bit in my hair for a while, and then once you've got press shots, you've got to fucking keep it up, haven't you? So this is in various stages of falling out, depending on how much I bleached it myself, or if I got a hairdresser to do it. I definitely had what I was going to look like before the rest of it.
Yeah,
and then,
but it's sort of that you're owning this. I think you come on and you sort of own the stage, and you're very confident. And it's not just about the way you look. I just think I think for a lot of stand-ups, it takes that. And I'm not sure I've even got there. It takes a long time to sort of nail down who you are on stage. And I suppose coming out what you're talking about that short film is just what I like. As an audience member, what I like. I saw you in an audience of quite a lot of single 30-year-old women, I guess, for seeing London Hughes.
Okay.
But even as a 52-year-old man, I mean, that's what I feel like comedy is. Like people say, oh, well, will the audience be ready for that? You talk very much about your own personal, experiences, which aren't similar to mine. You did a routine about, I think you did that routine about having sex on the landing and catching yourself in the mirror, which is a great routine. But, you kind of go, well, that's obviously true, because you wouldn't come up with that. But also it's, it was a sort of observation that, I wouldn't have thought about. And there was lots of things, that weren't my experience in that. But you enjoy seeing that in comedy, whereas I think a lot of comedy commissioners feel people will only want to hear stuff that they will absolutely relate to. Whereas actually, I love seeing people who are doing stuff that I don't relate to, as long as you believe it's true. You know what I mean?
Totally. And I think weirdly, there's like obviously that like it's universal themes, isn't it? It can be different scenarios, but like everyone's had that story is basically about how I catch myself having sex in a mirror on the landing. everyone has had the essence of that is you think something incredibly sexy is happening and then you see it for what it is and you're like, that is fucking disgusting. Like, I am foul. You know, like when you're like, you buy like a sexy negligee and you put it on, you're like, I look like ham that's been wrapped up in something and plonked on a counter. But so I think there's like universal themes of when we've all tried to be like sexy or suave, and it's just filtering it through the story. And yeah, it doesn't, obviously you don't have to directly to relate to it to know what that stuff is.
But it was a great gig. It was great to see London, who's been a guest on this before as well, doing so brilliantly. And but that's a difficult thing, even as a well-established comedian, to come on as that as the sort of support act, the first act on that kind of bill. It can be quite a difficult gig, but you did sort of own it straight away.
That's nice. It was great. Well, London is really London's great, and is the kind of person who she wouldn't do that weird thing of like, she was like, I want a support act who I feel like, oh fuck, I don't know if I can follow them. Like, you know, she's like, I want it to be a great show. And because also they're here for her anyway. Like, ultimately, she's going to have the gig that she deserves. So I was like so pleased when she asked me to do it. And it was such a fun, her audience is so fun and up for it. But it is that thing of, I've done loads of tour support over the years for various people. And I call it comedy cock blocking, because you basically usually sort of like shuffle on and you're like, hello, I'm something you didn't pay for and don't want. It's not like free Papa Docs where everyone's like, we're pleased to see you. It's like, what the fuck is this? And having to win them over. But like, that is such good training as a comedian to go on to. And some audiences, like it clicks and you're like, oh, brilliant. And some audiences you've got 20 minutes of convincing them that you're worth their time. And then you've got to fuck off again. But yeah, and I was just started touring a couple of years ago, and actually picking tour supports is one of my favourite things to do. Like, right, to because I basically do like, try and pick newer acts who I basically think, when did it help me most? And it was like when I needed the money and I needed the nice gigs. So I just go, you can do anywhere between 10 and 30. Like, if you're having fun, do as long as you want. Like, if you're having a shit time, just bail. Like, that's no good for anyone. And I always come and do a bit before them, and I always say, like, I can't wait to show you this comedian. Like, my friend is so funny and I think you're gonna love them. So it's always like acts I think that my audience would like as well, or should be seeing, and then hopefully we'll go and see them on tour again. But deciding who that is like really fun to.
Yeah, I've never had a support act in any of my tours.
Why is that?
Because I'm too mean. Well, no, I think I'm always too mean to pay him. I think it's because I've always got like a show that's two halves. Yeah. I've always got like a 90-minute show, so I don't need anybody. And I kind of think, I don't know. Well, like, to begin with, I wasn't making enough money to be able to pay anyone to come and do that. I suppose so. If you can get the support act to do the driving and everything, I suppose they can become. You could just about afford them, but I wouldn't. I was paying to such small audiences that I didn't think it was worth it anyway. But I always had too much. Like, Christ on a Bike was my first sort of solo tour show, and that was much. When we did Lee and Herring, we would have some like Peter Bainham or Kevin Eldon who were in the show, though. So they would do a bit, but they would also take part in some of the sketches and stuff. So it was a bit different. But it's nice to have someone, I guess, isn't it? As long as you like them, you've got to choose someone that you. Are going to get on with, especially if it's a long tour. If it's just, is it always the same person on the whole tour, or do you mix it up on the tour? I
try and do it so by geography, it's not costing them to get to the gig. Okay. And so on the latest tour, I think there was like 6 acts that I basically sent a load of dates to them, like, what works for you, and sort of fitted it in around them and tried to get everyone sort of an even mix of gigs. But it's not even. Because I drive myself, and sometimes I'll pick them up if they're coming from the same place and take them. But it's not even like, they're all great, but they're not like my inner circle of mates. Like, the easy thing would be to book like Pete Otway or Will Duggan, who are like some of my like oldest friends in comedy, and have them do it. But that's not the right thing to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're boys who can tour themselves. Like, it has, for me, it has to be someone. Has to be me, like however many years ago, when I would have been like, fucking yes. And I don't think I could really afford it when I was having people doing it. And it's always the biggest expense of the tour, because I never really stay over anywhere. But it just feels like I try and put money back in where I can. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, because I have benefited from coming up through the circuit. I guess I'm just one of the good guys, Rich.
I suppose you are, and I'm just one of the selfish guys. I think when you're starting out, the experience. It's not about the money, and luckily, because you're not going to get any money when you start out touring, unless if you've got on TV and you can sell 1,000 tickets everywhere you go, then that's fine. But if you're starting out and you're selling 25, 30 tickets, 50 tickets, then it's about the experience of touring and getting a show together and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Which I presume has been, you were on tour and working up to Edinburgh this year before the plague hit us. Yeah. So you've got a show.
I gamed the system. Do you know what I did this year? So in 2018, I did my show Victim Complex. And then 2019, I went and did 2 weeks at the Monkey Barrel of a work in progress. And I did some extra shows, and I got a new sketch group, Tarot. We did some stuff up there. They did a month up there. And I was like, right, I'm going to work out in front of the audiences it's meant for. And then I was like, I've completed comedy. And then I was like, and I'm going to tour in the spring, which is what I just started doing. And then the show's going to be, when it gets to Edinburgh, it's like the best it's ever going to be. And then if the tour was selling well in spring, which it was, it extend into an autumn leg. And I was like, this is it. This is the system. And so I do 1 year on, 1 year off. And then the fucking world ended. And now I don't know if the system works.
Yeah, it's annoying. I mean, it's I haven't been putting the show together for a few years, so I was just going to go up and do podcast stuff. So it's not, in those terms, it's not a disaster for me. Although I did prepay all my accommodation, which I've had for me and my mother-in-law, who's going to help us with the child money. We've had some of it back, but the letting agency has got no money. So I'm not sure we'll get our money back for them. They agree we should get it back. But I think more annoying than the money would be having worked up a show. I think for me, I wouldn't be at the point where I have a show yet. So I'd have just gone, okay. I don't have to bother writing it. But I know most people now do work like way in advance. So a lot of people have done 4 or 5 months on a show, even if they hadn't done it into 2019. And then just get to the point where it was just a hit a brick wall and they can't do it anymore. And if we're not going to come back for a year, then it's sort of almost wasted time, isn't it?
Yeah. And it feels like it's umming and ahhing over whether it ever goes to the Fringe, that show.
Right.
I don't know if it ever will. Because when you're doing shows, you feel differently about them, don't you? And I don't know if I'll stop feeling like this is actually what I want to say about the world, especially after all this. Like I keep looking at the notepad with it all in and be like, because it was all about sort of empathy and and living online and all that kind of fucking stuff. So I'm like, well, this will need a hefty old rewrite, won't it? There's no point doing it yet because we don't actually know when we'll be able to go and do gigs again. So no. I've just got to let it.
And all of next year's Edinburgh is just going to be COVID-19 shows.
Yeah.
Whoever's got closest to dying will win the comedy awards. Whoever's died won't. You've got to get just to the point. You've got to Boris Johnson it and just get a lot of oxygen and survive, and then anything for a comedian is a good experience. And how are you coping with lockdown?
I'm doing okay. I'm in Wales. I'm on Anglesey, and where we are is basically it's a farm, so it's there's loads of space. We don't really see other people. I'm here with my brother and my partner, which is great, and we're getting on really well. It's got a lovely. Went foraging for wild garlic today to make wild garlic pesto. Yes, I'm one of those cunts. But I'm actually having a really nice time because I'm really quite chronic workaholic. And it's to the point where my partner had to sit me down about 6 months ago and go, you have no days off for 10 weeks. This is not tenable. You can't work yourself like this. So we put in place a thing that was, I have to take 2 consecutive days off a month. That's my rule. And then all this happened, and I've still been working. I've still been doing stuff, but not anywhere near to the extent that I used to work. And I guess I had a fear of stopping working, and it's actually been really nice to learn that. I was going to say the world doesn't end if I stop working, but maybe that's why it's like this.
Get back out there. You can cure this. You can cure it through comedy.
I guess laughter's the cure. I guess playing to sort of moderate audiences is the cure. For me personally, that's that not working constantly is okay, has been a really useful thing. And also I really like time off, and I like just reading on a blanket in the sunshine. It's been really nice. But I'm also so aware that so many people are living in absolute fucking just horrific circumstances based on their work or their home situation, that you can't be too smug about it and going, actually guys, I'm in no hurry to go back. And so I do appreciate that we're very, very lucky. Yeah.
And are you having any of these stressed? I think a lot of people are having very weird dreams at the moment. I've been saying, have you had any weird dreams? Has that been hitting you?
Well, I don't remember my dreams.
What?
Yeah, so I've been, in fact, one of the things I'm doing at the moment is I think I'm filming like a little taster for a woman who interprets dreams, and I had to be like, oh, I don't have any. I remember about 4 dreams a year, and she's taught me actually how to remember your dreams, so I'm going to try and do it this week. And I do have a reoccurring one that I remember. Basically is I wake up doing this. There's a podcast. So basically, one hand is scratching the forearm of the other hand, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And my partner will stop me doing it. It'll wake him up. And the one time I remembered what was going on is there were insects under my skin, and I was trying to scratch them out.
Oh.
So I think the reason why I don't remember any of my dreams is because they're fucking horrific. The only other ones I remembered have been ones where I've woken up sobbing because I've watched a family member get murdered. I think it's the true crime podcast. It's all in there.
That might be it. Well, it's the one where I was trying to casually sort of about to inflict violence on my son was very upsetting. I can't visualize anything in my brain. I've discovered this year, I've talked about this every podcast so far, but I can't visualize objects in my brain. When I'm dreaming, I can see stuff. I have images then, I assume. I'm not just putting words together, but if I try and visualize an object, I can't do it. Can you do that? If you close your eyes and use your mind's eye to see an apple, do you see an apple, or do you just sort of... Yeah, so I don't see anything.
See the word apple?
Well, I just have the concept of apple, but I don't see anything. And if I can very occasionally get almost a flash of someone's face or something, but it's almost like it's behind my mind's eye. So it's not even really... So I can sort of imagine my kids' faces. But I can't see things. I didn't realize this was a thing till this year, and I just assumed I could see objects in my brain, and I can't visualize anything in my brain.
So that's a diagnosis of some kind, right?
Well, yeah, there is. It's called something like a asphyxia or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. Someone will tell me. But is
that why you're so good with words? Because your show was the first. I might have told you this before, but there's the first ever hour of stand-up I saw. So I was a student. It must have been in about 2007 or 8. Mm-hmm. And it was Headmaster's son.
Right,
and it was at the Frog and Bucket in Manchester. And basically Salford University were like, oh, we're going to have a comedy society. And there was 4 of us. And the social was to go and see you. And because there were student tickets and on standing. So it was only £3, which
wow.
Oh, amazing. It's really good, isn't it? Because I think standing tickets were £6 and then the concession on that was £3. And I was like, oh, I'll go and see any old cunt for that. And I did go and see it.
You did.
I was like, I could not. I wore uncomfortable shoes. That's one of my memories. Yeah. But that show, I'd never seen anything. I'd never seen an Edinburgh show before. And it was such a brilliant show. And I was just like, when you're looking around and you're like, guys, are you seeing? It was amazing. I was like, he's so, it's funny and it's but it's not theatre, it's not dog shit. I could not believe it. It was such a big moment for me to see a show like that. It was so brilliant.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah, it was great. And then I saw the other ones. I thought they were shit. No, they were great as well.
True.
I think I saw Hitler Moustache as well. Was that the one after? Yeah.
So more or less. Yeah. So I do put. See, back I sort of that show. I think I did sort of write. I don't know whether that's why I'm good at words. I sort of feel like it doesn't feel like a disability to not be able to see things. I think the only thing it really inflicts on me is that I can't do IQ puzzles where you've got to turn objects around, because I think you do that in your head.
Oh, right.
When you make a cube out of a bit of flat thing, I can't do stuff like that, and I'm not great at navigating, and which does sort of start to explain why that might be. So sat navs are great, so I can see things. So as long as the thing is in front of me, I can see it. So that's fine.
Oh, sorry, I remember.
So it's not as bad as it could be.
sorry to interrupt.
Go
I
on,
remembered
go on.
why I brought up your shows, not to give you that sort of just like wank you off on this, but was it was in Christ on a Bike where you did the beget.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, the way you were doing it, I was like, he must be seeing it written in his head, because it was so like I couldn't understand how you could possibly remember it, and how you remember all your shows. So much show.
I don't know really. How do I do that one? I do. It is with the words. I mean, it is words though. So there are with that begat one. It isn't seeing the visuals of some biblical characters wouldn't really help. So it's just making up links between the words and then just learning it. But I find, once something's in, when I came back and did all those shows in 2017 or whenever it was, 2016 maybe, I did all 9-10 shows over. It was 12 shows. 12 shows over 6 weekends. So I had to relearn all of them. But most of them came back sort of quite easily. And once you've got like a routine into, because at the beginning of that Headmaster's Son is that very verbose, me looking back at me burping at the Ascension Day service, but it's quite a, sort of mock heroic thing. But yeah, I wrote that down and then learned it, and I learned it quite quickly. My memory's not as good as it was now, though I do still remember all that Christ on a Bike thing. So I find it much more difficult to learn lines and things now than I used to. But I used to have a fairly quick retention. But yeah, I don't know. I read a memory book when I was a kid where you taught you how to learn lists of things. And maybe I use a version of that where you basically just have to create a visual link between the two things you're talking about. But I can't visualize things. But it must be me. But I didn't know I can visualize things. So if it was an apple to a pear, I would have that I'd have half an apple, half a pear in my head. But it would be just the words, I guess. I don't know. It's just like, there's nothing there, but I can still, like, I close my eyes. I'm imagining half an apple, half a pear. What is it? Nothing. But I know what it is. I can't see it, but I know what it is.
Wow. That's fascinating.
But then it is just, and sometimes I'd go wrong with that. The second time I did Christ on a Bike, or maybe when I did a best of show, and I don't think I ever messed it up, but usually on the Christ on a Bike tours, I would lose my place every now and again, especially going backwards. Because it is quite hard. It's quite a hard thing to do. You've got to concentrate, I guess. And then if you concentrate too hard, you fuck it up because you're thinking. You've got to concentrate and not think about it at the same time. And then you'll find the minute you start thinking, oh, but what if I don't know what the next one is? Then you'll be in trouble. So, yeah, it's weird. But I'd rather not. I would be disappointed if I didn't remember. I don't remember all my dreams, but I'd be disappointed if I didn't remember the dreams, especially the ones with threesomes in it. Those were great. They go on for ages. Usually your brain will trick you and go, right, bad luck, you've messed up there. I think it did in the end. I'll tell you what happened in the end of that dream. The second girl I was in a threesome with, it was weird. It was sort of turned into, something had nearly happened, and maybe something had happened. And then we were doing a RHLSTP, and I was interviewing Boyd Hilton from Heat magazine and one of the girls from Girls Aloud. And I was really nervous because I didn't know anything about either of them and I hadn't researched them. And I was also worried about the fact there was loads of people in a room and we weren't self-isolating. And then this girl was there as well. And then Russell Brand turned up and she really fancied Russell Brand and went off with Russell Brand. That's what happened in the dream. So it did go wrong in the end.
It did. I hope she's okay.
Because Russell Brand. She made a bad error, I have to say. Me and my wife would have treated her much nicer. We'd have probably just got embarrassed and said, let's just have a drink and watch Community. That's probably what we'd have done. Good. So, but you are doing a lot of online stuff to get you through this weird period. So have you been doing stand up in this the COVID Arms gigs, which you're doing for charity? Am I right? That's for the Trussell Trust.
Yeah. So what we do with it, the first one we just did it for the Trussell Trust, and then it went so well. We were like, well, we could kind of do this weekly. And Jake and Jess, whose idea it was, I set it up with. I said to them, and luckily they were on the same page, I was like, I don't want to ask people to work for free when their whole livelihood has been taken away. So the idea is that we basically split the money to the Trussell Trust and the comedians, and then the comedians can decide, and most of them do, to donate their fee over. But there's also absolutely no shame if they need that money. They're being paid for a job that they did. And some of the comedians are like, oh, split it between the acts who need it as well. So there's kind of a few ways it works. But I would say 80% of the money goes to the Trussell Trust. We've between that and the quiz that we did, we've raised about 100 grand so far.
Wow, fantastic, brilliant.
Yeah, it's great, and it also means that we can give, because like I say, I came up through the circuit, and I know all these brilliant people who love comedy, but they might only watch it on telly, or acts who are established enough to tour. They won't know about these absolute gems that we've got, and so it's a great way of going, I know you come here to see Russell Howard or whatever, but you've got to see this person. So that's been a really nice thing, because everyone's like, oh my God, these comedians are amazing. You're like, yeah, because they're as match fit as they're ever going to be. And, because they're normally gigging like 6 days a week, and yeah, they're just brilliant. They're just not on television, and it's not being on television is not a sign of not being brilliant. And because that's who I feel most for, is the acts who are solely relying on the circuit. It's a bit different if you have things like you have going on. I know you generate so much of your own work, or people pop up on TV or radio or all of those things. But loads of people, they live hand to mouth on the circuit anyway. People are so slow to pay people. You do the job on the night, and then it's 28 days back to follow that you then have to chase for 3 weeks. These weren't people who had a safety blanket anyway, and now it's just been whipped away. The government aren't doing anything till June, so it just felt like the least I could do. And then also doing it, I realised how important it is to me as a human to do something with an audience. Like how much. Just shows how deeply flawed I am, really, that I need an audience at least once a week. It's horrific.
And are you just doing your stand-up sets? Are people just sitting down on camera, or are they standing up and trying to look like they're in a club, or are they?
Well, a bit of both. It's a hard thing because I put on my Facebook page the other day, I was like, what do we do with this club? Like, it's great that you support. We can't keep going forever. I imagine it'll peter out, and I don't want to get to the point where we're raising no money for the comedians or the charity. And so people were sort of chipping in, and someone was like, oh, you should put a new person on. And I was like, I've thought about that. But what you're then doing is putting on a very inexperienced act into a very unusual way of performing. Because I think it takes a real, some people nail it straight away, and some people need to settle themselves down and talk their way into it. But it's some people have just stood up and done their set, and it's a bit like doing radio. Like you do it down to one person, and it works. But it's amazing what brilliant, amazing comedians get in their head about just doing it on a webcam. Doing it on a webcam, not doing a Joel Dommett. I mean, doing the stand up to a webcam. So,
sure.
So I host it, and because we do it on Zoom, people pay a bit more for front row ticket, which means I just go, right, let's have a chat to someone, and they can raise their hands, and it's like Noel's house party, and we go into their house. It's so good. And we also set them competitions every week. It's great, right? Because we're really lucky. Beavertown Beer, literally last week when we did the quiz, they're really great, and they really like the Trussell Trust, and they were like, we can give you some beer to give away. So it means that we can chat to people and give beer away, and we do these mad competitions because we're basically trying to make a bit of a community, and it's worked beautifully, and everyone's so nice and supportive. And all the acts shit themselves, and then they come off and they see all these amazing comments on Instagram and Twitter, and you're like, oh, and you get that validation back. It's so lovely. Yeah. And we have music to start with, then we have the first act, then we have a little break. Normally, so we have a wee because I've drunk too much, and then we have 2 more acts, and that's it. And I usually do a bit of material before I bring on the first comedian, but it is just literally a couple of minutes long. The rest of it is all just crowd work. It's comparing, basically.
Sure, that sounds great. So where do people see that if they want to tune in, and when's the next one?
Comedy at thecovid.co.uk. All the information's there. The next one is Saturday, and it's who have we got on? Oh, we got let me say his name right. Irvin Sparks, who is from the Hoosiers. Who's like, I've been watching the gig. Can I come and do music at it? I'm like, absolutely, yeah. And we've got Russell Kane, Angela Barnes, and Deliso Shaponda. So it's amazing. It's a really good bill.
I mean, it's sort of interesting because I do, I worry as much about the comedians, which I am worried about, and we've been trying to raise some money to help comedians through this. But it's the clubs as well. So whether they'll be, even if there are no clubs when we come back. But I wonder whether there's a sort of way forward for comedy clubs. Comedy clubs can do the same as you and maybe charge people. Like if it's a couple of 2 or 3 quid, if you can get an audience around the world of 1,000 or so people, then you can make that work as an evening. But then also when they come back, maybe that they should be live streaming gigs all around the world as well, because it is much better to see live comedy live, but I don't think we're going to be able to do it effectively for a year, I would say. Certainly, I mean, 3 months is the best possible, and I think we're looking more like 7 or 8 more months, I think, before we're back. And then whether people will turn up to see live gigs, I don't know. So I think like online, it might be a positive thing in terms of pushing promoters into understanding how much the internet can be a positive thing, and also comedians as well to understand that they can, get a following and possibly online.
It's been a really interesting thing to see, and this isn't like it's. I think it. Well, I'd like the headline to be: it's complicated because I'm not telling anyone how to manage a global pandemic in terms of their workload and their health. But it's been really interesting to see how different people and organizations have dealt with it. So, like the Comedy Store were like, right, well, we've got all these shows filmed. Let's just ask the acts. Let's put it out. People can buy a ticket to a show and they get a live comedy experience. And like they've been pretty quick and responsive with that stuff, which is amazing. And it was, I think, slowly, obviously Hot Water Comedy Club with their videos have sort of really led the way with that. Slowly the iceberg was moving with them of comedy clubs are like, well, we've done it one way, and sort of harnessing the power of the internet and much bigger audiences, and I think now it's a necessity, so it will be a sort of diversify or die situation. In fact, when we did the COVID Arms hosted like a world record pub virtual thing. That's not the official title of it, but we got a world record hosting a pub quiz. And one of the things is it supported NET. So, they're like a big group of charities, and they basically go, right, who needs money in this area? And it goes locally, it goes to much smaller charities. And the other side of things is people would pledge a virtual pint to their comedy club or pub, which is a way of going, we can't be there now, but like we understand that you still have rates and outgoings and things like that. So I think that we probably need to look at a way of being responsible to venues who've been good to us and what we can do as
no, definitely.
But yeah,
well, there's no, that's what I think. Like, if we can get comedians through however long it is, great. But if they come back and there's no gigs, I mean, like I was saying to you before, and it's going to be weird if you got a touring show and it keeps on getting pushed back, but so's everyone's. And then, how are we going to fit all the shows that from this 8-month, 10-month period, whatever it is, into the whenever we start. So it's going to be, I mean, hopefully it'll be a boom time, but I think the boom time probably won't come until maybe the end of next year. I think when hopefully everything will be more sorted. But yeah, I think it's that thing of trying to find inventive ways to get through it. And it depends on, I guess, I mean, you and I have both been doing stuff online for several years anyway. So, we had a sort of head start with that. But I guess it's sort of being able to see those possibilities, which isn't something that everyone is interested in, I suppose.
Yeah, but I've been really so like Mick Ferry, who we both know, fucking brilliant comedian, like one of the best live comics we have, and won that Comedian's Comedian live act, and is always nominated in the Chortle Best Club Comedian category, and usually Compare as well. He's someone who, I hope you wouldn't mind me saying, I would have thought, fuck, it's going to hit Mick hard, because he doesn't really populate stuff online. And quite the opposite. He started filming sketches. He's done a 2-minute podcast that he records with people. He's got loads of stuff going out. And you're like, well, that's how you do it. You go, right, okay, it's a different world. I've got to adapt to it. And that's someone who's been on the circuit for years and years and years. And you think, well, if Mick can do it and gets a head around this, then there's like if you're a younger comic who's already like speaks the language of the internet and subscribes to podcasts and speaks the language of that, then there's no reason why you can't sort of like harness it and hopefully use it to build a bigger audience. Because one of the things that's come out of the COVID Arms is I was like, right, well, I always get, I'm aware of people who like what I do, but for various reasons can't attend live events. And that might be childcare, or it might be social anxiety disorder or mobility or whatever. Why the fuck have I not been doing a show for them this whole time? And also, like, internationally, people are like, when are you coming to Australia? And it's like, we're not entitled until someone who's got fucking loads of money at a festival takes a chance on me. That's not happening. But I can still do a show that you can see. And because what we do with the COVID Arms is it goes out live and then you can watch it for 48 hours later. So obviously I can't interact with you if you're watching it later, but it means we're not missing out key workers and things like that. And so something like that to me, like a virtual tour date, is definitely something I'm going to look at doing.
Yeah, well, but it's good because even if you're doing something in a location, there's people who even in the UK who, if you do a UK tour, can't get to a show.
Yeah.
Just geographically, you can't cover the whole of the country, but you've got the world. Exactly as you say, you've got. There's people who watch in America who watch me clear stones at 8:00 in the morning in the UK. I think it's like 2:00 in the morning where they are, and they're watching a man in Hertfordshire along with like 150 other people clearing stones. So there's an audience for anything out there. And once you've got worldwide, once you go to 6 billion people, you can get a very small percentage of them to watch you and to maybe donate something. Then that's great. But it is also terrific, I think, when people, obviously, like you're saying, there's people who need entertainment who also aren't making any money at the moment. So I think it's great that a lot of the stuff is viewable for free, and the podcasts are always free, obviously, as well. Let's talk about something jolly. I'll ask you some emergency questions. What have I got for you? I'm going to ask you some of the new. I'll ask you. Comes from a picture my daughter drew last week, which we discussed last week. Would you rather fall into a pool of lava or be eaten by a crocodile?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's my 5-year-old daughter's emergency question, accidentally.
I was obsessed with monsters when I was a kid, and there was a monster in Japanese folklore, I think. That's probably really racist, and I've said the wrong country. I think it was called a tengu, Tengu, and it used to grab you by the shoulders and drop you into a volcano, and I used to obsessively, compulsively think about how that would be the worst thing in the fucking world. But then I was obsessed with crocodiles and really scared. This is genuinely a very hard question for me.
It is. But I think being eaten... Well, see, they're not... They're neither of them a nice way to die. She drew a picture of me falling into some lava because I'd annoyed her. And then she said, hold on a minute. And then she drew a crocodile in the lava that was going to catch me and eat me. So I don't know. I think like in that situation, if the crocodile's in the lava, you'll probably end up being chewed up and then burnt to death as well.
Yeah.
So you'll still be alive to feel the being burnt up as the crocodile burns up. But if not... Being eaten by a crocodile is probably worse.
I think it is.
The lava is a rapid death, I think, isn't it?
Well, who can verify that? I mean, my instinct is yes, that you hit and it's done. It's like, but
what? Well, it's head first into a crocodile. You're going to feel some teeth.
Yeah.
There's going to be a bit of flailing limbs.
Well, if they get right on the spine, done. I'm like, I can't feel anything.
Yeah, true. Okay, well, hopefully that will happen to you if this situation ever occurs. If you could have, this is mine. I don't think you were. I was doing this one when you were last on. If you could have, if all the art galleries and museums in the world got together and decided they were going to allow you to take any one item, which could be an artwork, could be a historical artifact, could be anything in any museum or art gallery. Is there one thing you would like to take home and keep? You're not stealing it. They've all agreed you can have it. Well, and it could be anything in the world.
Chances are they stole it in the first place.
That's true.
What have I seen that I really like? Oh, that's such a good question, isn't it?
It is a good question.
I think it would be an artifact over a picture or anything like that, because everyone would assume it was a fake anyway, because the amount of dog hair in my house. Artifact, what would it have? Oh, well, this feels really hack, but the Tutankhamun's sarcophagus.
Yeah,
that'd be nice, right?
It would be amazing. I went to see that there's a Tutankhamun exhibition in London at the moment in the Saatchi Gallery. So I went to see that. They didn't have that main bit that you all know. You're talking about the big blue and gold thing. They obviously had pictures of that. But there was some amazing stuff in there. Like there's a pair of gloves that have survived. The thing I would like is there was like basically a pencil case. It was basically his pencil case. But it with some kind of oldie world writing implement in it. There was just some really bizarre but really amazingly preserved items that they found in his tomb. Wow. It's well worth going to see if it will still be there when they get back. I presume that it was very crowded. I would like to go now because they wouldn't allow hardly anyone in there if it's still going. It was much too crowded, so you couldn't really enjoy it. And then there's also like this virtual reality thing where you sit in a chair and then you swoop down into the tomb and get to look around the tomb like that, which was pretty good as well.
Wow,
that cost extra. But yeah, good choice. Tutankhamun's.
I'd put a bit of glass over and make it a lovely coffee table. Imagine that.
Yeah, there was like some big statues that were there. There was some just amazing stuff because you don't see any of the, and I'm quite into history. I don't know a lot about Egypt, but I hadn't seen all that. I was just so surprised about all the stuff that was in there. But there were these massive black statues of guards that were standing outside, I think, the tomb, outside the actual, the bit where he was incarcerated, because obviously we wouldn't. You were inside the tomb, but they were pretty impressive as well. Something like that you could go. It'd be a bit like, oh, do you know what? This is from Tutankhamun's tomb. If you've got the main thing, you go, yeah, we know what it is.
Okay, yeah, it's a bit on the nose.
You've been wearing that round, and you could go, oh, do you not know what this is? Oh, this is one of the guards from of Anubis or something.
I think outside. It is Anubis with the two. Yeah, that would look lovely in a garden, wouldn't it?
It would. But it's an amazing exhibition. A terrible curse. Everyone involved in that deck. Do
you believe in the curse?
No. Okay. They're all dead now, though, aren't they? So, and Tutankhamun's dead as well.
If that isn't proof,
he had a terrible time. Right, so let's see what else I've got for you. I want to talk about Anglesey. I don't know if I talked to you about Anglesey. I'm quite obsessed with Anglesey.
Really?
I've never been. Well, no, I don't know anything about it. I've just sort of thought, what the hell is Anglesey? I've never been to Anglesey. It's only it's the Menai Straits, right? Is that right? It's the Menai Straits separated from Wales, which is like 250 meters. It's scarce. It's like a river rather than an island.
No,
right?
It's actually, you can't really cross. You couldn't swim it because it's got is it swellies? So they're like the whirlpools that are under the surface of the water. So it will pull you under. The University of Bangor on the mainland is really brilliant for marine biology degrees because it's so biodiverse. So there's like moray eels and octopodi, whatever the fuck you call them, octopuses. There's loads of really exciting stuff in the Straits. There's 2 bridges onto the island. There's about 70,000 people who live here. It's the second highest proportion of first language Welsh speakers in Wales. So yeah,
well, I read on Wikipedia in 1901. This is just from memory. It was 91% Welsh speakers, and now it's 52% Welsh speakers. But I think 9% of people can speak Welsh. But it was 91% to 52% of people who speak Welsh as their primary language, I think. So it's still pretty high, but, the people in 1901 would be disappointed with you.
They would.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, I think what happened in that period is caravans. Because it's an absolute hotspot for people from Liverpool or Manchester. I've usually had childhood holidays over here. It's really beautiful, and most people have been here.
What should I go and see if I came to Anglesey? What's the main tourist attractions?
Okay, right. Okay, so the things I would send you to see are the place with a long name.
Okay,
you'll be very into that. Is that one? There's a really beautiful National Trust house called Plas Newydd. There's an absolutely fucking you should go and see this. It's on the mainland. It's called hold on. What the fuck is it? Penrhyn Castle. Now, this is made by the Penrhyn family, and it's a neo-Norman castle. It's National Trust as well. So it's basically some rich fucking millionaire from back in the day who was like, yeah, I want to build a Norman castle, but one I can live in. And fascinating. If you go around it, if you're a National Trust member, which I am, there's barely any volunteers, and it's because years ago the Penrhyn family fucked over the local slate mines in Bethesda, and they really treated the workers badly, and that ill feeling has settled down generations, and it means the only people who volunteer there really are English people. It's fascinating. And also there was loads of they were really bad for slavery. They made their money off sugar as well and slavery, and they impounded loads of the letters that the people who were enslaved had sent, and they normally people burned them and eradicated them, but they kept them. So there's now this huge bit of history being uncovered of people sort of telling their story of being an enslaved person in their own words, which you've never had before because everyone's just hidden it. So that's quite exciting. Yeah, and Pili Palace, which is
when you say. I was going to say, when you say it's on the mainland, is Anglesey the mainland, and there's other islands around it, or you mean it's on? It's in Wales.
It's on where it's Bangor.
Well, I don't. No, I'm not going there. I'm not going to Bangor. I've been to Bangor.
Okay, fine.
I'm pretty sure I've been to Bangor. I didn't realise I was that close.
Yeah, it's really close. It's just there's 2 bridges. You should see. You should go over the old bridge, the Thomas Telford one, suspension bridge. It's very nice.
Who is your favourite celebrity from the island of Anglesey?
Dawn French.
Yeah, she was born there. That's my main one. That's the main one.
And Kate and Wills lived here for a while.
I do know that. Yeah. What about my favourite one? Is Sefnin the medieval court poet. That's my favourite Anglesey resident.
I think
if I could bring any Anglesey person back to life, it would be him. Love his poems. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Old Sefnin. And I would go and see Paris Mountain.
Oh God,
there's a copper mine.
It's absolute shithole.
Is it? Okay.
There's an Anglesey edition of Monopoly, and it's one of the brown squares on it. Yeah, genuinely. And the Park Lane, is it blue one, the blue purple square, is just because there isn't loads on Anglesey, is Menabridge Waitrose. That's what's on. It's so cute.
Wow. There's been a copper mine on Paris Mountain since the Bronze Age.
Oh yes, that's
well, that sounds pretty good. I don't want to Anglesey-splain you. This is just stuff I picked. There's King Arthur's Seat is on Anglesey. Have you been to King Arthur's Seat?
No, I mean it's alleged, isn't it? The King Arthur knocked around this bit, but yeah.
Okay, all right. That's all I wanted to know. Did you? So you weren't born in Anglesey, but you grew up on. You were on a farm. You grew up on a farm in Anglesey.
Yeah, basically.
Is this very farm?
This very farm.
Yeah.
So I was 8 months old when I moved here.
Okay.
This is all I remember.
Yeah. And I think I saw an interview where you were talking about because you obviously got a propensity for quite dark subjects in your comedy or serious subjects in your comedy, and you're interested in serial killers. And I think your shows. I was just hearing you talk to Chris Evans before we started. It was about
non-offending paedophiles,
non-offending paedophiles, or the Welsh population, as we call them here. I'm joking, of course. Wales, I love the Welsh. Is that being brought up on a farm? You have to see some pretty from a young age. You're seeing some pretty dark stuff, I guess. If it's a I'm assuming it's a farm where you've got animals and
I grew up
slaughtering
with sheep and cattle, and I guess I didn't realise how much horrific stuff I was not like bore witness to, I guess, rather than like subjected to. So stuff I would talk about thinking it was completely normal, and then the children around me would be crying. But it's because like farm life is very hard and nature is quite cruel. So I remember coming in telling everyone about so sometimes when a ewe has too many lambs, so she's got 4, and you think, well, she can do a really good job of 3. And another ewe, as lambs have died, what you'll do is you'll take one of the dead lambs, you'll skin it, and then you take one of the other lambs and you put it in the little lamb jacket. So she smells it and thinks it's her one, and then adopts it and brings it up, and then eventually it sort of hulks out the dead skin. And I remember telling people this when I was like sort of 8 or 9. I was like, it's so good. And then my dad skins it, and everyone was like, ah! It's like some heartwarming Easter tale. But like when you see all that kind of stuff, and you see a lot, you see dead animals, and you see animals brought back from the brink. And my mum was amazing, like because she was the farmer, and she basically did lots of sort of like rudimentary surgery, not in a weird way. She wasn't sewing stuff together, but I mean, I saw her like, because there's adders around where we are, and they would sort of bite the sheep's faces if they, I got too close. So I would watch her like, I just sit there and watch her like irrigate wounds on a sheep's face, and like I've got a scar here that she just sewed up because she had like one of those curly things. So she would do it on the sheep and sew them back together and stuff. So like I watched my mum fix a sheep's prolapse with some baling twine. Like you see all this stuff and you just think it's totally normal because you think everyone else has that childhood, and then you go to play at other people's house and you're like, they have a swimming pool and their dad's a lawyer. Everything's a bit different here.
So if I was going to make a human centipede, your mum would be a great person to help me out with that.
Absolutely.
With getting that
and she's got that sort of like, that sort of the reserves that women had during wars where they know when to keep their mouth shut and just sort of crack on. She's like that as well. If you're like, Mum, I really need you to just sew some people together, she'll be like, okay, fine. Make sure your father feeds the dogs. She's incredible.
Okay. It's interesting. And do you think that was that just a journalist thing of seeing those things is why you've been more interested in that kind of dark side of comedy, or do you think it's
No, I think it's more growing up, there were always books in the house about ghosts and weird animals and like cryptozoology and things like that. And like my brother, who's here now, used to religiously read Hound of the Baskervilles to me, and I was terrified of it. And I used to listen to books on tape. I'd listen to Alfred Hitchcock did a kids series called The Three Investigators, or certainly his name was put to it, where they would solve mysteries and they were quite creepy. I used to listen to that as a book on tape. The Lost World, which is about dinosaurs, Frankenstein, and Dracula. And so like I was just immersed in pretty scary stuff. And I think that kind of fear, that's what I get really excited about, like the darker thing. And then once your barometer's off, you don't know what's dark. Like so many times with the sketch group, people are like, it's really dark. And you're like, fucking hell, the stuff we should see, the stuff we threw away then, because this is just trying to be lighthearted and accessible.
And do you think, because obviously comedy's changed a lot in the last decade, and that kind of darker side of comedy, and I know that certainly in All Killer No Filler, you are covering those dark subjects and in a forward-looking way, I think. But has it become more difficult to do that dark comedy as tastes have become like a little bit more reserved, I suppose, about stuff like that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we really have generally the benefit of All Killer is that when we're being irreverent about dark subjects, they are usually coming at it with the backstory of sort of 50 hours of listening to us being empathetic. So you can be a bit like, you can be contrary because you've kind of earned it.
Yeah.
And I definitely think we noticed it a bit with games that audiences were being sort of more, I guess not sensitive is not the right word. They were just, they were suddenly going, is this all right to laugh at? And we work so hard on making sure that we are always coming down solidly on the right side. Like, I think it's fine to, play with those edges and push the boundaries. But if someone calls you out on a joke, you should always be able to have the courage of your conviction to say, no, I promise you we've thought about this. Or similarly, if it's about a group of people, say, if that group of people are in the room, you should still feel comfortable doing it, is what I always think.
Yeah.
And I think now audiences are having that conversation with themselves. So I think if you're being rigorous about your approach to writing comedy and what subjects you cover, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, because like I look back at the stuff I was doing in the noughties was everyone was pushing things as far as they could, really. And there's definitely been but I think but always, even in the 90s, we would always discuss the repercussions of all our jokes and what the point of them was. And, so I think I can pretty much defend nearly everything that I've ever done as not just necessarily gratuitous, or if it's gratuitous, it's the gratuity of it that is part of it. I think the thing that's changed is now things get taken out of context a lot more readily and a lot more easily. And because of social media, just even like this, there's a thing that came up this week. Right? So there's a group of people on Twitter who, because one day I tweeted, it's when Sam Smith came out saying they wanted to be the pronouns, and I just said, surely just it's polite to call people by whatever they want to be called. You would just do that as a course of action. So there's, and then a lot of Graham Linehan type people, including Graham Linehan, got in touch to tell me that was wrong, and that would mean people were raping people in toilets if we started doing that. And so I didn't. I replied to two people, and then there was this avalanche of people, and I stopped replying to anyone because I just thought it's not worth it. I don't like these people. I don't like where they're coming from. I wasn't, I could understand both arguments at that point, and I had some sympathy for some of the feminist arguments that I did have at that point. But actually, these people made me think, no, you can all go fuck off. I don't care about anything you guys say, because the way they came in was just awful. But I stopped replying to anyone. But then someone said within that conversation, Richard Herring has replied to all the men who've posted and none of the women. And so I responded to two people, and I don't know what sex they were. I hadn't checked that. But that was, I just had stopped replying very quickly. And then even now, someone put me in a list of people who will not reply to women about subjects and only reply to men. So this week on Twitter, I picked that person up and said, this isn't in any way true. But the way that like something taken out of context and something that's stated by someone, because even Graham Rennan was going, Rich, why are you applying to the women and not the men? And then I couldn't reply to him anyway because he was a man. So if I'd replied to him, he would have just shown up. But I wasn't doing that. But I couldn't say to him, that's not what I didn't do that, because that would have proved him right. But it was amazing how that amongst some people there's a fact about me that I am that I'm an anti-feminist because I will only respond to men and not women. Which, if I don't think if you looked at my Twitter feed, would bear up even as a regular thing. But that's if you take one joke, if you make one joke, and you could take a joke from a show I did in 2007 and put that on Twitter, and people go, "Oh God," But within the context of the show, it would work as it worked as the journey of the character of Richard Herring within that show. So I think things have changed in that way, but I think I would hope you can still and I still think for most people, I think the vast majority of people don't actually give a fuck, which isn't a positive thing, but most people I think are still bamboozled by most of these arguments about this. But I think it's that if you are confident that you understand why the target of your joke and what it is, and in my case, it's nearly always myself. Then it's sort of fine. But it is a weird thing. I'm glad that dark humor has not been ruled out, and that for example, that thing we started talking about, the hungover or pregnant sketch, short film. Like you say, some people go, well, there's period blood in there. Is that too offensive? And it's the opposite of that, isn't it? It's actually. It's the minute you said that, you kind of go, that is weird that people would not want you to have that.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's you can't take into account every single criticism you get of something. It's got to come from your own viewpoint. But it's. I mean, I've over the 30 years I've worked, obviously, I've seen a lot of changes in what is acceptable and unacceptable in comedy. But I think a lot of the stuff in the 90s that would now people would look back at and go, that was awful. I felt I was seeing other people doing those things and feeling quite uncomfortable about it at the time. So I think that's probably why I can still work now, because I didn't really enjoy stand-up in the male-dominated laddish stand-up of the 90s. I kind of felt really embarrassed about. And I think me and Stu sort of largely, even though we were in Loaded and things occasionally, but we were always embarrassed when we were. Right, not like, hooray, we're Loaded.
But also, don't we all, like, the thing I think is important is, don't we reserve the right to grow and change as people? Like, I definitely wouldn't understand. I'm sure if someone went through my Twitter, there'd be stuff that I'd be like, that is fucking horrific. I don't know why I thought that was funny. That's me being some edgy 23-year-old. Like, what
of course,
fucking asshole. And it's the whole thing of like, look, especially when you're taking tweets from someone's history and being like, they use this word. They always, they're assholes who do it. But Mary Black, the brilliant MP, they'll be like, oh, look what she said, but maths was a cunt. Like, oh, she's foul-mouthed and she's stupid and all this kind of stuff. And be like, but look at her actions. She's an incredible MP. She's impassioned. You don't get to dismiss her body of work because you managed to find one tweet where she doesn't come over brilliantly if you're going to be a pious arsehole. So, like, look at what people are doing and what they're putting out in the world, and not just what they're saying, like, what are they doing? Like, and if, like with you, like, with your, when you do on November 19th, that is such a fucking thankless ball ache thing to do, to raise money for refuge. And like, if you're going to take away from that you don't care about women, like, that's an agenda that someone's bringing to the table that just isn't true.
Yeah, well, it's sort of interesting to see all that stuff. But absolutely right. And I really hate the idea of anyone making a mistake so bad that there is unless it's driving a bus through a schoolyard or something. But there's no way back from to have an opinion. And then what do you want if someone, there's this idea that people are hypocritical if they then change their mind, but that's surely what you want. You want them to change their mind, and so you're digging up all this old stuff. It's fascinating, and I think that's what has changed, I suppose, in comedy is just that everything's on record. And thankfully, most of the stuff I did as a teenager or a younger in my 20s is not accessible to anyone. So, the terrible mistakes you make, but I think that's if basically we would write a diary. If my diary, I've read bits of my diary out in shows in Headmaster's Son, and there's a lot of awful stuff in there that I wouldn't like people to think, oh, Richard Herring believes that. But anyway, it's interesting. But I'm glad, I hope. I can't see comedians changing that much that there won't be a dark streak. Or most comedians have at least a dark streak in them of the jokes they'll tell backstage if they don't tell them on stage.
Totally.
And I think it's about whether you trust the person. I suppose the audience has to trust you. And if they do trust you, you can sort of say anything you want because they know where you have that complicity of friends that you can do jokes that you do with your friends with an audience if the audience trusts you in that way that they know that you're coming from the right place. If you're employing irony or if you're just pushing things into a dark place to because a lot of comedy is surely about that release valve of the world is an awful, awful place. Let's joke about the awful things that happen so that we feel a bit better about it, as well as let's joke about nonsense and also cheer ourselves up while we're in these awful situations. Anyway, look, we've it's been so much fun talking to you. We've gone on for ages already. It's gone by in a flash. Congratulations on the Carolina Hearn bursary, which you got this year. It was fantastic. I was very glad to see that. It's a lovely thing to get.
I'll be honest. I've pitched a few ideas, a little bit dark for them.
Well, Caroline had a very dark streak to her and a wicked streak to her, so I think she would appreciate it. We'll carry on seeing you at the COVID Arms for however long this goes on. I presume we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And then one day maybe we'll all get to do a gig again. That'd be nice.
Yeah. And so hopefully your tour might be back in the autumn or the spring, or
it's been moved. It's been moved to the autumn, so it's on my website if you wanted to come and see me, or the rescheduled dates. But we'll just see what happens. I can't wait to start kicking again. But in the meantime, there's the COVID Arms. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been really great fun. Thank you so much for doing it. Good luck with everything, and I hope we all get out the other side alive. That's the main thing. Ladies and gentlemen, Kiri Pritchard-McLean, thank you very much. See us next week for Richard Osman. Thank you for watching. I'll put the outro on now. Goodbye. See you, everyone.
How'd you like them sky potatoes?